I'm going to bet you probably don't know how to travel. In 2018, BBC released an article titled, "Is it true only 10% of Americans have a passport?" Before explaining my system that I've used to travel to over 50 countries around the world while being an engineering college student, I'd first like to explain why this article is important and what you can learn from it. In 2018, when that BBC article was released, around 42% of Americans had a passport, but nobody around the world would believe it. Why not? Here's a quick breakdown of what that number actually means. On average, about 10% of Americans travel to Mexico each year. Estimating the total number of distinct Americans who have been to Mexico would be around 25%. These travelers would likely just visit family or take that one spring break vacation to Cancun or Cabo. 5% more Americans have likely just visited Canada or maybe Western Europe once. These two numbers add up to 30%. Removing these from the grand total of the 42% of Americans who have passports leaves just 12% of Americans. These are the Americans who've really gone out and explored the world, having seen more than just one or two countries. So yeah, BBC, maybe it is true that just 10% of Americans have a passport because the rest just aren't really using it. So what does this mean? Well, we kind of suck at traveling. But no need to fret, there is good news. Welcome to Luke Salwa, the place to learn how to live and travel better. This video will be your guide to have much more enriching experiences than the average American. I'll share my method, the travel hierarchy, which I've learned along the way while traveling around the world. So why should you listen to me? I'm a college student at the University of Texas at Austin, and I've traveled to over 50 countries, mostly backpacking alone or with small groups and visiting friends around the world. I frequently get asked questions such as, how can you afford to do this as a student? And how do you have such unique experiences? This channel will answer those questions and share some key lessons I've learned from the 3 countries I've lived in: Denmark, Spain, and the United States of America. Let's jump into the travel hierarchy, which explores how different types of travel impact your understanding of and exposure to different people and cultures around the world. You can use this model to enhance your future trips by learning from all the mistakes I've made in the past. The first distinction is vacationing versus traveling. I don't think vacationing is a type of travel, but it often is considered one, so it gets the very bottom tier of this pyramid. Don't worry. I'm not saying vacation is bad, it's just not all that hands-on. Think about it. If you're sipping your piña colada at a resort on the beach with your friends, can you really tell if you're in Mexico, Hawaii, Portugal, or Indonesia? No, not really. Similarly, you probably can't tell where this footage is from either. It's pretty fun, yeah, of course, but it's not travel. Every other tier on the travel hierarchy has much more exposure to other cultures. Why is vacationing so different? Vacationing typically refers to a period of time set aside for leisure, relaxation, and enjoyment. Think amusement parks, beachfront all-inclusive resorts, and thrill activities like ziplining and scuba diving. The purpose of vacations is to take a break from routine activities, recharge one's batteries, and enjoy experiences that bring pleasure and rejuvenation. Yes, you may be in a different country or city, but you're not really there to witness anything outside your resort or activity. You just don't have any cultural connection whatsoever to the place you're in. So what are the other tiers and how can you travel better? All the other tiers are actual forms of travel, and while pleasure is still a main purpose, traveling also involves activities like cultural immersion, education, and adventure. This goes hand in hand with the famous quote, "Travel is the only thing you can buy that makes you richer." These next types of travel are a lot more hands-on with other cultures and are more rewarding and enriching. Travelers in the next tier, which is really the first tier of traveling, are no longer contained in the resort or adventure activities, but are actually in the new place or city. However, they're guided by someone. Think excursions to a port city from a cruise, guided bus tours, or even short walking tours through a city. Yes, you're physically in these sites, but you're shuttled around and don't really have that much say in what you do and have these organic interactions with locals that let you learn more about the place. When you're finished with your activity, you normally have to return back to your cruise ship or bus, where you receive services and are treated as if you were back in your home country. This type of travel is called protected travel, because someone is always there holding your hand as you journey through a new place. If you haven't left the US yet and are worried about safely eating food abroad, or traveling alone as a female, or just generally want someone to figure out all of the logistics for you, then this type of travel can be for you. Elsewise, I would stick with the higher tiers because they can bring so many more benefits, which we'll discuss soon. The next tier of travel is generally where most Americans stop at. This tier is tourism travel. These travelers have full autonomy in what they choose to do. They're out in the open world, trying new foods, wandering alone or in their small groups throughout the city, waiting in queues to see the famous landmarks and touristic sites in the new country or city. These travelers stay in hotels in the city and can confidently say they've fully seen a location. However, as you'll see in future tiers, there are still more rewarding experiences to have, and this type of travel has even faced criticism recently, which will be the subject of my next video, explaining the case against travel. The next tier is hands down my favorite way to travel. It's actually fairly uncommon for people from the US to travel this way, but it's arguably the most popular form for people between the ages of 16 and 35 to travel from many parts of the world, including Europe, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and parts of East Asia. Before sharing these final two tiers with you, first I want to share one lesson from the country I've just spent the most amount of time living in, Denmark. Danes are known for being well-traveled, and even though the country only has 5.5 million people, which is smaller than my hometown of Dallas, Texas, Danes are so well-traveled, you can always find a Dane anywhere in the world. Coming from Dallas, I'll never be in Poland or somewhere and hear, oh, another person from Dallas? No, we're not that well-traveled. Traveling is important in Danish culture, and almost everyone in the country takes a 1 or 2 year sabbatår, or gap year, before starting university. They normally work half the time and spend the rest of their break traveling on the money they've earned. While in Denmark, I traveled to many countries and learned from the Danes about how to better travel. Danes travel so much, they actually have many different words for types of vacations. For example, here are a couple of pretty popular types. Active ferie, which is an outdoors-focused, high-intensity trip. Storbyferie, a vacation focused on one or several large cities. Strandferie, a beach vacation. Skiferie, a ski trip. Kulturrejse, a vacation focused on immersing oneself in another culture. Eventyrrejse, an adventure-focused trip. Wellnessferie, a vacation focused on mental health and the body. Campingtur, a camping trip. Rundrejse, a trip with multiple destinations where the travelers return to their starting location. And Luksusferie, a luxurious trip where everything is high-end. Isn't that crazy? What? In the US, we really just have, well, vacation, and maybe we don't necessarily use it as well as we could. Jumping back to the travel hierarchy, here is my favorite tier of travel, backpacking. In this tier, travelers travel light with just one bag and either alone or in small groups. Most of my traveling has been in this tier, and I like to travel a mix of with friends and solo. Also, when I say solo travel, I'd like to point out that you're never really alone. When I was in Prague on my first ever solo trip, I chose a hostel with a great social environment so I could meet new people and share parts of my journey with others. Hostels are a great way to meet fellow travelers and are probably the easiest way to begin solo traveling. The more backpacking you've done, the more flexible you become to meet people. For instance, when I was busing from Kazakhstan to Kyrgyzstan alone, I met an older British couple at the border checkpoint, shared contact information, and spent dinner, the evening, and the following day with them. Solo traveling doesn't mean you have to do everything on your own. I'll even admit I can't stand going to restaurants by myself. I'll always find another person or group of people to go with. Solo traveling just means you have the option to do activities by yourself, or you can do them with another person or group of people. You're flexible. I believe solo travel is more culturally rewarding because you're less tied to those of your home culture and you can more fully immerse yourself in the location where you are. Backpackers usually don't have set plans, unlike the previous type of travel, and are open to meeting people in hostels, on the streets, in bars, in restaurants, and in many other places, and spontaneously figure out the next thing to do with those around them. Because you only have one backpack, you have a lot of flexibility, and normally loose travel plans, meaning you can leave early or extend your stay wherever you are based on how much you like the place. All right, the big reveal, the final and highest tier of the hierarchy. The peak tier is homestay, living in a different home with a family for an extended period of time in a new country. These are the most in-depth cultural experiences you can have without actually moving to the country. In a home, you're naturally forced to eat the same food as the family, share their routine, and have an entirely different set of conversations than you normally would in a hostel. You build stronger relationships and can hopefully remain in contact with a family after you've left. I've stayed with a host family in Cuba, India, Mexico, and Germany, and each time was strikingly different and incredibly rewarding. I was able to stay with each family for a separate reason, and I'll be making another video about how I got each of these experiences and some other tips you can use to stay in a home abroad. Now that you know the different tiers of travel, I'd like to thank you for watching this far into the video by sharing a couple of different tips you can use for all types of travel. The first is that just because the higher tiers are more culturally rewarding doesn't invalidate the lower tiers. There is still a great benefit to taking a vacation and recharging one's batteries on the beach. Just understand there's less cultural exposure the further down this hierarchy you are. Depending on your needs and wants, travel can have aspects from all of these tiers to cater to what you're looking for in your travel experience. The second tip, if you're looking to further deep dive into another culture, is knowing the local language, which greatly enhances travel. There's a famous quote from Nelson Mandela: "If you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart." It's completely true. Without making jokes in Spanish when I lived in Spain, I wouldn't have been as close with my Spanish roommates as I am now. Without singing songs at a bar in Danish with my Danish friends, we wouldn't have bonded as much when I lived there. Language enhances travel. Finally, I'd like to end the video by sharing the main lesson that I've learned from all of my journeys. The little moments between all of the big activities are the most memorable. Walking to the Eiffel Tower in Paris, getting lost, and winding up at a beautiful French bistro, or singing popular Desi songs in an Uber across New Delhi, India, with locals are experiences that I believe are greater than seeing the Eiffel Tower or walking around the Delhi Gate. It's going to sound like another Honda commercial, but it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Thanks for watching. Hit the like and subscribe buttons to stay up to date with future content, and I'll see y'all in future videos. Want to learn more about Luke Soloway and what the name means? Here's my channel intro.